Hi everyone, my name is Barbara Howe and I'm president and a founding member of the Asian Women's Leadership University Project. What I'm here to do today is talk about what's in the name of our organization, which is establishing a global women's leadership university to cultivate a cadre of women leaders who can change the world. And that's what this talk is about today. It's about transforming women's leadership through higher education. I'd like to thank the TEDxLSE organizers for putting on this event related to innovation, critical thinking, and leadership, because that's exactly what this university is trying to do and to cultivate in its students. I'd like to start out by telling you a little bit about myself, and then I'd like to talk about why I think this is an important idea, what's unique about the concept, and why, importantly, it should be funded. I'd like to just tell you first a little bit about myself. I'll get to this in a moment. So I'm Barbara. I'm Taiwanese American from San Francisco, and I've been the beneficiary of extraordinary educational opportunities. I went to a very good public magnet school in the city, and then I went to Smith College, which is a private liberal arts all-women's college in Massachusetts. After I graduated from Smith, I attended the University of Michigan Law School, and then I started work as a corporate lawyer in Hong Kong. I think through these experiences, I've recognized that I've been the beneficiary of so many opportunities, but that there are many other people who are in fact close to me who haven't had these opportunities. And some of these people are in fact quite close to me, such as my mother. So I'd actually like to take a moment to tell you a little bit about her, because I think she's an incredible woman, and she's been a great role model for me. So my mother is in the left upper hand corner, and she is one of 9 children, and the reason her family had so many children was because they really wanted a boy, and the first 8 children were all girls. So I think we all are pretty familiar that in many cultures, boys are highly valued, and this was certainly the case in my mother's family. That being said, my grandfather is actually a wonderful man. He was very loving and treated his daughters very well. Unfortunately, shortly after this photo was taken, my mother's mother had passed away. So at that time, my mother was 11 years old, and she was the second eldest in her family, so she was left with the responsibility of taking care of all of her younger siblings, and as a consequence, she couldn't sort of pursue her own education. I think as a new immigrant in the United States, language and culture were additional barriers. And so to support our family, my mother actually worked 3 jobs, which she actually still does today. So she works at night as a grocery store clerk during the graveyard shift, and she also works 2 jobs during the day, juggling jobs as a bookkeeper and a translator. And she saved and scrimped and did that so that she could afford opportunities for me and my siblings, including receiving a really excellent education at places like Smith College, in fact, as full fee-paying students. So, the reason I want to talk about my mother is because actually I don't think her story is all that uncommon. I think there are a lot of people that we can all think of perhaps in this room, women who are smart and ambitious and capable and talented and resourceful, but they simply just didn't have the opportunities that I think many of us in this room have enjoyed. And imagine what they could do if they had the opportunities that we had had. If they had the language skills, if they had the access to people, to networks, to technology and information, and to an education. So I think I come, from this perspective. The reason I work on this project is because I think there is so much potential to give women a really great education. And so I want to actually talk a little bit about that. I think worldwide we recognize that women want a really great education, and that in places like Asia or the Middle East, it's not that there aren't universities, but it's that frequently the majority of those universities are inadequate. And when I say inadequate, I mean, there's a focus on rote memorization. There's frequently specialized study very early on without exposure to broad topics. There isn't an emphasis or encouragement for critical thinking. Sometimes political instability can interrupt study for years at a time. There's a whole slew of issues such as discrimination in the classroom, and if people really do want to get a good education, they really have to go overseas to a place like LSE or to the US or to other colleges and universities in the UK. The problem, however, is that, I know that in this room there are probably a number of international students, but the people who actually get access to those types of opportunities are a very narrow band and very privileged groups of individuals. For many people, being able to, pursue an overseas education, they meet a lot of barriers. They can't get a scholarship. There are very strict admissions rates for international students, or the tuition is very steep. And I think in the context of Asia and for women, frequently families will not let their daughters actually travel overseas to pursue an education. So, I think we all recognize why education is important, right? We're all familiar with the general literature that, women who are more educated are more likely, to delay marriage, to delay childbirth. The children that they have are more likely to be educated, and to be healthy themselves, and that this produces a stabilizing effect in the community. What we also know is that it's not just education that necessarily leads to leadership. For example, we know that in regions such as the UK or the United States, there's actually pretty good gender parity in education. But when we look at leadership, we actually find that there's a dearth of women in leadership positions, even in places like the US and UK. I think the statistics are, women occupy less than 15% of leadership positions in top companies in the United States and the UK. If we look to other regions, such as Asia or the Middle East, that percentage drops to about 3%. And we obviously all think that women's leadership is important because, there's statistics and data that shows that companies that have women involved in leadership positions are more profitable. Countries where women hold more respected status in society are more stable and democratic and experience higher growth rates. So I think we're all familiar with that. What we may not be familiar with, that I'm familiar with as a graduate of Smith and growing up in the US context, is that US liberal arts women's colleges are highly effective at fostering women's leadership. So, if we look at all the female graduates in the United States, only 2% actually graduated from a school like Smith College that's single sex. And yet, they occupy 20% of women, they comprise 20% of women congresspersons. They're 33% of the women board members at Fortune 1000 companies, and they also comprise 30% of Business Week's rising women corporate stars in America. So clearly there's something that's happening at these US liberal arts women's colleges that's working. And what people think it's that for some women, the ability to spend time in a single-sex environment for a few years has real impact in terms of increasing the confidence of women, giving women opportunities to assume leadership roles on campus, and that there are opportunities to identify other role models, other women role models who are in leadership positions. So to us, that's pretty compelling, and I think as a graduate of Smith College, that education has been really powerful for me, and I've contrasted sort of the experiences that I've had in my life with the experiences and opportunities in, say, my mother's life. And so the question is, how do we increase women's leadership? For us, the answer is actually quite simple. It would be a global women's leadership university, particularly for women from the Middle East and Asia. And so what our organization is trying to do is to establish this university called the Asian Women's Leadership University by 2015 with inaugural students of 100 students representing 10 to 15 countries, and the university would be located in Malaysia. So that's the idea. Now, what is unique about the idea? The thing is, if you look anywhere in the Middle East or in Asia, this type of educational model offered at a place like Smith simply doesn't exist. So there isn't a 4-year undergraduate liberal arts curriculum that fosters critical thinking, broad exposure to various academic disciplines, very close faculty-student interactions on a residential campus where there's a bridge between academic and social learning. So we think this is a pretty good idea, and the Asian Women's Leadership University would be the first of its kind. It would be pan-Asian, so in the sense that it would be, in principle open to students worldwide, but drawing primarily from the Middle East and Southeast Asia, East Asia, and South Asia. And I want you to just imagine the type of diversity that we can see at a school like this. You would have students from Thailand, from Sri Lanka, from India, from China, from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, all coming to this campus to learn with each other, to live with each other, to study together, and ultimately we hope to grow up to become each other's strongest supporters. What we're kind of envisioning is what we call a network effect, which is, part of the way this TEDxLSE event was able to sort of come online at all was because of a series of connections. You know, two people had an idea, they enlisted their friends, and then they were able to put on this event. Similarly with this project, it's the same thing. How are we able to, you know, try and set up this university? It's a series of connections to various people. And what we hope is that this type of university can give these students those same types of connections. It would be English speaking, and it would offer a very innovative liberal arts curriculum, so students can take courses in a variety of subjects. Imagine being an engineering student, but also being able to take a literature class or an art class or a science class, and having a cross-interdisciplinary approach to education. We also think that, you know, there's a critical component on leadership. And so when we think of leadership, we think about things like public speaking, negotiation, but also things like financial literacy, conflict resolution, and social enterprise. One idea for this campus is to have an innovation incubator program. So the idea would be to help students, you know, take their concept and develop it from concept to market with access to seed funding. So what we like about this university is that it's a perfect vehicle. It's a highly effective vehicle to pull together these different types of programs and initiatives housed within the institution of a university. So this is what we're trying to do. We think it's a good idea, and I want to emphasize that, you know, this is not about an education for elites. It's about an elite education, and access is really important to us. And so when we think of access, we would provide scholarships for students, and we would also work with existing foundations and organizations that already work with underserved and underprivileged youth at the primary and secondary level, so we can foster the investments already made in these students, so that we can further grow their personal potential. I guess at this point, I want to pose the question, well, how do you actually set up this type of university? Well, it turns out that it's actually not that difficult. It's like the four legs of a table. There are four foundational elements. You need select a host country, you need land for the campus site, and you need an academic partner and, of course, funding. So I'm pleased to say that we've made pretty good achievements on at least three of these four milestones. So last month, the Malaysian government actually approved us as an entry point project, which means that we're recognized as a federally supported project in Malaysia. And we're really excited about Malaysia because it's a moderate Muslim country, so it can attract students from the Middle East, but it's also highly culturally diverse. It's a stable and growing country, economically growing country. And there's international connectivity to the region, and there's also very strong support of local Malaysian leaders. In terms of land for the campus site, we've identified Penang, which is one of the 13 states in Malaysia, to house the campus. Penang is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's been known to be a melting pot of cultures for centuries. It's an island, so there are beaches and therefore delicious seafood. And so we think students would love learning and living in a community like that. And 2 days ago, and this is how fresh this project is, 2 days ago, we actually secured my alma mater, Smith College, to serve as the chief academic planning partner for this new university. Smith is one of the oldest women's colleges in the United States. It's a top-ranked institution, and they would help us design the curriculum, think about admissions and faculty hiring and the administrative structures of the university. So we're really glad to have their support. And so because we've made progress on these three of the four legs, we're now beginning the process of thinking about about fundraising for the establishment of this university. I'll say these achievements were made within a 1 to 1.5 year period based entirely on the global efforts of a volunteer team. So we have a global team in London, in San Francisco, New York, Hong Kong, Singapore, Malaysia. We've got a board, a global project team, and advisory council comprised of several university presidents. For example, the former president of Cornell, the presidents of Smith College, Mount Holyoke, Bennington, the dean of the MIT Sloan School of Business. And what we found is that the reason people seem to be so responsive to this project is because there's something that really resonates about Asia, women, and leadership. For us, this is a concept whose time has come. That's part of the reason where we feel like there's great momentum, and we think that all these things we care about, sustainability, women's empowerment, international relations, all of these things can be addressed through this type of global women's leadership university. So I guess I would like to conclude just by saying that, I'm not anyone special. I feel like, just like anybody, any other citizen, but I was able to have a really great education that allowed me to envision different possibilities and to believe, perhaps naively, but to believe audaciously that an idea like this was possible. And the reason I work so hard on this project is because I think it could do so much good for so many people in the region, and it would have a multiplier effect because those young women will get an extraordinary educational opportunity, and they will go out and create opportunities for other people. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share this vision with you, and thank you so much for supporting us also to help us make this very worthwhile idea into reality. Thank you.